confirmation that private games is still being worked on, details on update 4.6 to come next week, specific data mines, and updates on the most severe bugs currently plaguing the multiplayer experience. This is your week on the battlefield. Welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. As per usual, there's much to cover, so let's jump straight into it. This week in Battlefield 5, we had a new playlist, Sunshine and Shootouts, featuring Marisha, Mercury, Provence and Lofoten Islands on Squad Conquest. We also had the Breda PG as final week of the Chapter 4 challenges, giving us a further assault rifle, specifically of course a burst assault rifle, but other than that, there wasn't too much new content in the game. And the same applies to next week, where most likely, given that we are seeing the end of Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 is not going to start for quite some time, we won't see any new updates or content for Battlefield 5. What we will see, however, according to the Battlefield 5 weekly debrief, is update 4.6 being slowly but surely finalized as well as tested over at DICE, and as such, there is an expectation that we should be getting some information on the contents as well as the release date for that patch next week. Also, with Chapter 4 coming to an end, hopefully either towards the end of next week or towards the beginning of the week after, we should start to get a clearer picture as to when exactly to expect Operation Underground, the, if you so will, in-between content, and maybe even eventually Chapter 5 and the Pacific. In soon TM news, we have private games, one of the main features currently the community is worrying about, given that we haven't heard anything about it for months. Further to that, it was initially supposed to launch sometime in September, many believed even as part of Chapter 4. Now, Jeff Braddock hasn't come out and confirmed that we will be getting this next week or the week after, or that it actually isn't cancelled. What he has confirmed, however, is that the team is working on it on a daily basis, and thus I think it's fair to say that while we're unlikely going to see private games make it to Battlefield 5 in September as initially announced and planned, it does seem to be a feature that is coming to the game relatively soon and hasn't been abandoned just yet. Then in Temporyal data mining goodness, of course this week we had a bunch of news on Chapter 5, specific content added to the game by update 4.4. Now alongside further weapons and cosmetics, the kind of stuff you would expect from a data mine, Temporyal was also able to uncover that 4 maps are currently planned for the Pacific, one more than originally officially confirmed by DICE. Now if you want to learn more about everything we expect to come in Chapter 5, the Pacific update, both from what we have officially over from DICE as well as some of the many Temporyal data mines we've had over the last month, I made a video on that just this week. I'll have it linked in the usual places. In a category that becomes ever more important in Battlefield 5, Battle of the Bugs, I have a small update on some of the most pressing issues currently plaguing the multiplayer experience in Battlefield 5. First of all, what we should note is that update 4.6 will fix the exit velocity issues currently faced by pilots or passengers jumping out of planes. Also, the high ping issue was originally of course set to be fixed in a hotfix this week, but now won't be fixed until update 4.6, which is coming later this month. The same applies to the other major issues currently plaguing Battlefield 5 and introduced by update 4.4, such as, for example, the gamepad mouse PC bug and the Firestorm looting problems currently severely impacting that game mode. The reason for DICE supposedly delaying the fix is to ensure not only that it doesn't cause unintended consequences, in other words, it works and doesn't introduce additional bugs, but also to make sure that working on this hotfix doesn't jeopardize update 4.6 and the expected launch date that is supposed to go out on. Which is an absolutely fair argument, but I think it's fair to say that especially the ping and Firestorm looting issues are currently severely impacting the enjoyment of a number of players in the multiplayer experience. Then in community news, following a break from the barrage of disappointment and negativity in the community last week, we saw this week return to somewhat more of an increasingly worried attitude towards specifically private games and Firestorm. As for example, Firestorm was set to see squad respawning and improved looting systems introduced to the game in Chapter 4, and with Chapter 4 now basically coming to an end, it seems like those things aren't happening and we have no update or information as to when they actually will be introduced. Similar thing for private games. Having not heard anything about it for multiple months, many people are worried that a lot of these features are getting cancelled or delayed to the point where they never actually will show up to the game. A similar thing can actually be said for the team balancer, or lack thereof, which was announced all the way back 10 months ago as priority over at DICE, and yet to this day has not seen any significant updates, and most definitely not any new information from the dev team over in Stockholm. Then in our only in Battlefield moments, we start this week off with Elgar 1 and this absolutely insane bombing run. Next up, we have G-Tutor showing us all what the drilling is truly capable of with this absolutely crazy shot. In some tank action, something we don't often have on the show, we have Drunken Vendetta turning what looks to be the end of him and his tank into an absolute win with a little bit of creativity. And lastly today we have C-Rob Dog with Death by Building Tool. With that, however, coming to the end of this week's episode. If you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions, and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With all that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode of This Week on the Battlefield.